They say love doesn't ask for permission, but maybe it should have. Because when I first saw him, standing under that old oak tree, rain dripping from his hair, I didn't see a boy. I saw everything I had lost: youth, passion, and a reason to feel alive again. But life has a cruel way of reminding us that some fires were never meant to burn, and yet, here I am, standing in the ashes, wondering if loving him was my greatest sin or my only truth. Amelia, V.O. This is not a story of love. It's a confession, and it began with one forbidden glance. I used to believe that some moments are ordinary, until one of them changes your entire life. It was a cold October morning in Vermont, the kind where the air feels like glass, sharp enough to slice through silence. The streets of Maplewood were covered in a thin layer of mist, and the maple leaves, those crimson reminders of time passing, were scattered across the sidewalks like broken promises. I walked my golden retriever, Daisy, down the same path I'd taken every day for the past 7 years. My boots pressed softly into the wet leaves. The world smelled of rain and fading sunlight, that strange perfume of autumn that always made me think of things ending. I was 38, divorced. And though people said I had moved on, the truth was, I hadn't moved at all. My life was a routine, a circle that began and ended with loneliness, until I saw him. He was standing under the old oak tree across the street, that ancient tree that somehow had more life in it than I did. He was young, early 20s maybe, with hair dark as rain-soaked soil and eyes that seemed to hold something restless. His hoodie was damp, sleeves pushed up slightly, revealing wrists pale from the cold. One hand was in his pocket, the other holding a coffee cup that looked too small in his grasp. He wasn't doing anything special, just being there. But there was a stillness about him, the kind of stillness that makes everything else fade, the cars, the wind, even the sound of my own footsteps. For a heartbeat, I forgot to breathe. And then, he looked at me, just one glance, brief, innocent, but I felt it all the way down to my bones. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was recognition, like my soul had just remembered something it wasn't supposed to. I turned away quickly, pretending to fix Daisy's leash. When I looked back, he was still watching, not in a bold, intrusive way, but with quiet curiosity, as if trying to understand why I looked so lost. I walked faster, pretending it didn't matter. But my heartbeat betrayed me. Every step away felt like walking against gravity. By the time I reached home, my hands were trembling. Ridiculous, I told myself. You're almost 40, Amelia. Get a grip, still. That night, as the rain began to fall softly against my bedroom window, I couldn't stop seeing his eyes. The way he stood under that tree like he belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. And I wondered, who was he? The days that followed the next morning, he was there again. Same time, same place. I told myself it was coincidence, that maybe he just liked standing under that tree. But when he looked up and smiled, I knew coincidence had nothing to do with it. That smile. It wasn't bold. It wasn't flirtatious. It was shy, almost grateful, like he was relieved I noticed him again. I nodded, pretending it was just polite acknowledgement. But inside, something fluttered, something I thought had died long ago. That night, I sat in front of the mirror longer than usual. I stared at my reflection, the faint lines near my eyes, the softened edges of my face, the subtle reminders that time had already chosen its favorite side. What would he see if he looked at me? Really looked? A woman past her prime? Or someone who still had a heartbeat beneath all that calm? I hated myself for wondering. I hated that my pulse quickened just thinking about him. But most of all, I hated how alive it made me feel. The coffee shop encounter. 3 days later, I saw him again, but this time not by the oak tree. He walked into the small coffee shop where I graded my students' essays every morning. The bell above the door rang softly. And there he was, same damp hoodie, same calm eyes. He noticed me immediately. For a moment he froze, unsure if he should come closer. Then he smiled that same shy smile, and something inside me just Gave in, he ordered a black coffee, then glanced toward my table. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked. His voice was gentle, low, uncertain, the kind of voice that carried weight even in a whisper. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's a free country." He laughed softly, the kind of laugh that warms a room without trying. "You're the lady with the golden retriever, right?" "And you're the boy who stands under the oak tree," I replied before I could stop myself. He blushed slightly. "I guess that's me." We talked for half an hour about nothing, really. Weather, books, the smell of rain, Vermont winters. But behind every word there was tension, the unspoken kind. When he told me his name, Ethan, I repeated it quietly, tasting the syllables. It felt too young to belong in my mouth, too innocent to belong in my story. He told me he was 22, taking a break from college to stay with his aunt for the semester. He wanted to be a writer. Not famous, he said, just honest. That word stayed with me. Honest. I hadn't been honest with myself in years. After he left, I stared at the empty coffee cup he'd left behind. It was absurd how much space one stranger could occupy in your mind. But there it was, an ache I couldn't name growing quietly beneath my ribs. That night, I dreamed of rain, and a boy standing beneath an oak tree, waiting for something that felt like destiny. The third meeting, it wasn't long before I started timing my walks. I told myself it was coincidence, that Daisy just needed her morning stroll earlier. But every morning, I somehow ended up near that oak tree again. And he was always there. Sometimes he'd wave. Sometimes he'd just nod. Once, he even brought Daisy a treat, laughing when she jumped up to take it. "You should name her Trouble," he joked. "She already answers to that," I replied, smiling. We started talking more, in passing, in fragments, in moments that didn't mean to matter but somehow did. He told me about his favorite authors. I told him about my students. He listened, really listened, in a way no one had in years. One afternoon, as clouds gathered above the horizon, he said quietly, "Do you ever feel like you missed your own story?" The question froze me. How do you answer something that close to the truth? "I used to think I was the main character," I said softly. "Now I think I'm just background noise." He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "You don't seem like background noise to me." That was the moment I felt the ground shift beneath me, silent, subtle, irreversible. The awakening. That night I sat on my porch, watching the rain fall. The sky was bleeding shades of gray and red, and I could still hear his voice echoing. "You don't seem like background noise to me." I realized then that I had stopped thinking of him as the boy under the oak tree. He was Ethan. He had a name, a presence, a pull that felt too strong to ignore, and I was already falling. I didn't know where it would lead. I only knew I couldn't turn away anymore. Soft instrumental music rises. The camera pans up to show rain falling on the oak tree, glistening under a lonely streetlight. Amelia V.O. Some stories don't begin with love at first sight. They begin with loneliness, two souls drifting through the same storm until one glance becomes a spark neither can escape, and in that spark, I found something I had lost long ago in myself.